Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grace Church for another episode of Hymns of Grace. It is Tuesday, October 20th, and we're so happy to be with you again and bring you some great hymns of the church. We've been doing 3 hymns each week, but today I'm going to do 2, and I'll explain a little bit more about why in a moment. But our first hymn today is hymn 685 in the hymnal 1982. This was requested by our good friend Gordon Martin. Many Grace Church folks certainly know Gordon and Joan Martin, Joan having spent much of her life in the music program here at Grace. And Joan has requested some Easter hymns, which we will get to for sure. But Gordon requested 685, Rock of Ages. Again, you've heard me talk about hymns that cross the divide between more liturgical churches, such as Episcopal or Lutheran, and more Protestant-based churches, or even evangelical churches, Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, sort of, on the spectrum there. But this is certainly a hymn I grew up with, in Tennessee, in the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church. It's a very, very popular hymn. So Rock of Ages has shared the fate of many hymns, in that it has been revised and improved, both of those words in quotes, revised and improved, sorry for those of you who don't like air quotes, by many editors and authors. The original text was written by, I love this name, Augustus Montague Toplady. In a 1775 edition or issue of Gospel magazine, an article entitled Life a Journey appeared. That was the title, Life a Journey, and it was signed by Minimus. That was one of Toplady's many pseudonyms. He was also an editor of that publication. Perhaps that's why he used pseudonyms for the articles. I'm going to just read to you a minute from our great hymnal companion here. This saves me retyping things, but just a little bit from this article that appeared in 1775 in Gospel magazine. Yet if you fall, be humbled, but do not despair. Pray afresh to God, who is able to raise you up and to set you on your feet again. Look to the blood of the covenant and say to the Lord from the depth of your heart, and here we go, this was the beginnings of the hymn, Rock of Ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. And the word's a bit different here. Foul, I to the fountain fly, wash me, Savior, or I die. The article continues, make these words of the apostle your motto. And here is a quote from Julian 970, in the year 970. Perplexed, but not in despair, cast down, but not destroyed. Perplexed, but not in despair, cast down, but not destroyed. Those are great words for our time today. Unfortunately, incredibly appropriate for so much of what we're going through today. In March of 1776, a year later, a series of curious articles appeared in Gospel magazine, again, of which Toplady was the editor at the time. Overall, our hymnal companion gives us several pages about this. I'm going to summarize for you. But overall, these articles compared England's national debt and England's inability to clear the debt with sin in the world. So contrast between the national debt and the inability to overcome it, and the inability to overcome our debt of sin in the world. The discussion ended with the complete hymn text, which we know today as Rock of Ages. It appeared under the heading, A Living and Dying Prayer for the Holiest Believer in the World. So this was the summary of the hymn that Mr. Toplady had written. A living and dying prayer for the holiest believer in the world. I don't know if there's supposed to be only one holiest believer in the world or if there's supposed to be several. T.S. Cotterell's revision appeared in print in London in 1815 and has gained great, if not greater, following than the original Toplady text. So it's similar, of course, based on it, but it is different. As we've learned, many times the revisions are quite different, especially after the opening lines or opening text, they sort of veer in a different direction. So T.S. Cotterell's revision is more of what we know today. The text was matched with the tune Toplady, obviously named for Augustus Montague Toplady. It was matched with the tune Toplady in Episcopal Common Praise, which was published in New York in 1867. It was also published with another tune as well, but this is the one that is more popular and more well known. The tune was composed by Thomas Hastings, and it was first published in 1833 as a trio in spiritual songs for social worship. And the tune has also been called Devotion, but again, most of us know it as Toplady. I think of the hymn a bit as again, a bit sentimental in a way, but also very gospel-oriented, and sort of very evangelical. And so I'll just give you a quick read of the text. It's not long, and then play a couple of stanzas. Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy wounded side that flowed be of sin the double cure. Cleanse me from its guilt and power. It's a quick word here. So the evangelical tradition never shied away from talking about the blood and the washing away of sin and the cleansing and the blood of Christ and the riven side from which the blood flowed. However, you almost would never see in an evangelical church a crucifix. So, and likewise, while in many Catholic churches or Anglo-Catholic churches or even many Episcopal churches, some Lutheran churches, you might see the crucifix in more than one place. You might not hear this language in the same way. So it's as if some parts of Christianity have chosen to remember Christ's sacrifice by words and others by symbol. So just an interesting compare-contrast. Should my tears forever flow, should my zeal no languor know, all for sin could not atone. Thou must save, and thou alone. In my hand no price I bring, simply to the cross I cling. Again, reference to the cross, and you would maybe see a cross in an evangelical church, but probably not a crucifix. While I draw this fleeting breath, when mine eyelids close in death, when I rise to worlds unknown and behold thee on thy throne, Rock of ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee. Powerful text, and I think near and dear to many folks of a number of generations. So I'll play a couple of stanzas of this hymn with words by Augustus Montague, Toplady, and a tune by Thomas Hastings. Thank you so much, Gordon, for requesting that lovely hymn. I have a feeling a lot of people will have really enjoyed hearing that today, so thank you for that. So we're going to move on to a Eucharistic hymn in our hymn book, hymn 339. Excuse me. And this, I know you've heard me say so many times, this is a favorite of mine. Well, this is a favorite of mine, and I mean it every time I say it. So this was one of those hymns I think I've mentioned to you before. When I became an Episcopalian, this was a hymn I did not know from my former traditions and church experience, and it was, I wouldn't say life-changing quite, but it had a profound influence on me, both musically, spiritually as well. So this was requested by Paul Twelves. Paul has, we've done a number of hymns that Paul requested, and he requested great ones. And while I'm on that, I'm working my way through our list. We have a few hymns that were very specific to specific days. One that we're going to do in a week or two for close to Reformation Day. We have a hymn that was requested that's appropriate, a couple for All Saints. We'll do that in a couple of weeks. But I could use some more suggestions. So please write in, email me, let me know what you'd like to hear, what hymns you'd like to explore, and we'll do that. We'll plan to continue our our hymn series, at least through Advent, I think, for the fall. So thank you, Paul, for requesting hymn 339, Deck Thyself, My Soul, with Gladness. One of the great accomplishments of the 1940 hymnal was the addition of a number of German church songs. This is a Eucharistic text by Johann Frank and matched with the tune Schmücke dich, o liebe Seele by Johann Krüger. It has become one of the most beloved Eucharistic hymns in the collection. The earliest reference to this German Lutheran Eucharistic, that's hard to say, German Lutheran Eucharistic hymn by Johann Frank, is the citation of the first line published in Wittenberg, Germany in 1646. So this goes back a ways. A further 8 stanzas were added to the first stanza in 1653. We've talked about this before, that the number of stanzas we have in our hymnal today often are fewer than the original. We are not inclined to stay in church quite as long as people used to be. So there were 9 stanzas. We've gotten 3 of those. And our hymnal 1982 used stanzas 1, 7, and 9 of the German, and left us with 3 stanzas in the hymn. It's warm devotional poetry that expresses an intimate relationship between the believer and Jesus Christ. Now that's interesting to say. I'm going to read that again. It's warm devotional poetry that expresses an intimate relationship between the believer and Jesus Christ. So think back to In the Garden, and the day we did that hymn, and we talked about hymns that were personal, about personal relationship with God, and not so much corporate, but personal. I suppose this particular translation crosses that divide a bit. It is a bit about a personal relationship, and there is some I language as opposed to we language. However, it is a Eucharistic hymn, and by definition, as we know it, Eucharist is a communal or community occurrence. This is something we celebrate and come together to do. It's one of the hardest things about the times we're in right now, is the inability for some churches to be together and celebrate the Eucharist together. So while yes, it's a personal hymn of personal devotion, it, by the very fact that it's referring to the Eucharist, it's also a communal text that draws us together. The melody, Schmücke dich, which is fun to say, I love umlauts, written by Johann Krüger, another umlaut, first appeared in 1649, and the Harmonization is from the English hymnal, and this is one of Krüger's most popular hymns. I just want to say a word about the translation that we have. The translation in our hymnal, and in many, is by Catherine Winkworth, who was a 19th century hymn writer and educator. She often doesn't get a lot of headline because she's the translator. She didn't write the original text. Catherine Winkworth has translated hundreds and hundreds of hymns. And if you flip through our hymnal or many hymnals, you will often see translated by Catherine Winkworth, again, 19th century, and did a great amount of work for us to have these English translations that we have. The literal translation of Schmücke dich, o liebe Seele, is adorn yourself, O dear soul, or O sweet soul. So what I'm going to do today, we'll play a bit of the hymn, actually. I can do that first. But unlike other days, I'm going to actually play you a chorale prelude by Bach on this hymn. I don't want this to turn into an organ recital by any means, but it's because I believe that Bach's prelude on this hymn is so beautiful and just such a supreme setting of a hymn tune, where it's recognizable but yet decorated and it's been elaborated. I think it's a wonderful example. So before I do that, though, I will play a bit of the hymn here. Interesting thing about this hymn, the hymnal 1982 chose not to use any time signatures. So those of you who studied music at all, or even if you had piano lessons a bit, think of common time or cut time, 4/4 time, 3/4 time. Clearly, many of our hymns are in a meter, but the hymnal committee chose not to put any time signatures. It makes it very difficult when you're teaching young children, because we use the hymnal as a teaching tool, and we're talking about time signatures, but you can't really refer to them there. You have to imply them. They're implied. But this hymn does something that very few of our hymns do for us, which is there are either 4 or 2 beats in some measures, depending if you're beating the quarter note or the half note, and then there are 3 quarter beats in some other measures, and then some have 5. So it's a bit irregular, and it gives it a lilt and a dance. Not quite irregular in the same way when we were doing Innisfree Farm, It doesn't feel quite that irregular, but it's the same idea. And what the effect here is almost an exuberant, lilting dance. So just play a bit of this for you. The harmonization, which comes from the English hymnal, it's not credited here who actually did it. It just says the English hymnal. The harmonization is really lovely with lots of suspensions. And by suspensions, I mean where notes rub together in dissonance and resolve. So right away, the soprano and the alto. You hear that dissonant resolve, and you get that over and over. That's a very pleasing thing to the ear. Most people respond very positively to that resolution of those suspensions, dissonant to consonant. So here's a bit of the hymn. Let's see. Let's get rid of some of that. Such a satisfyingly wonderful hymn. So just beautiful in of itself. So what I'd like to do though today is share with you Bach's prelude on Schmücke, and I'll tell you just a little bit about it. So Bach's setting is BWV. All Bach's music has been cataloged and with BWV numbers, and this is 654. It's part of the 18 great chorale preludes, which were basically date from the last year of Bach's life, some of his last writing, and I think some of the most beautiful. And I'm just going to read to you a little bit from Hermann Keller's book. This is The Organ Works of Bach, a contribution to their history, form, interpretation, and performance. Now, this is not the most modern scholarship on Bach. I think it's good scholarship, but it's not the most modern. However, I like it. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about this wonderful chorale prelude on Schmücke. Of the three large arrangements of an ornamented cantus firmus, and I should just say cantus firmus is a hymn tune. That's just the actual melody of the tune, of the chorale or the hymn tune. So, of the three large arrangements of an ornamented cantus firmus among the 18 chorales, that collection as I referred, Schmücke has achieved an almost legendary fame. This came about through Schumann, who, apropos of an organ recital in the year 1840 at the Thomas Church in Leipzig. This was the church where Bach had been the organist. And that recital, by the way, the proceeds from it were to go for a monument to Bach. So I'll read that sentence again now that I've filled you in. This came about through Schumann, who, apropos of an organ recital in the year 1840 at the Thomas Church, or the Thomaskirche in Leipzig, had written about it. And here's the quote. This is Schumann, around the cantus firmus were hung gilded garlands, and such happiness had been poured into it that you yourself, and he was talking to Mendelssohn, you yourself, Mendelssohn, confessed to me that if life were to deprive you of all hope and faith, this one chorale would restore them to you. So again, this is Schumann saying to Mendelssohn, around the cantus firmus were hung gilded garlands, and such happiness had been poured into it that you yourself confessed to me that if life were to deprive you of all hope and faith, this one chorale would restore them to you. I don't know, I'm not a scholar. I'm very quick to admit that to everybody. I'm always more interested in just sort of, getting to it and doing the music. So I don't know how much we can prove that. Keller was respected, so that's probably right. But I love the idea of it anyway. And we all, I think, could use some hope and faith these days. So I hope this chorale can do that for you. I just want to say a little bit about Bach's treatment of it and the wonderful phrase, the gilded garlands on the cantus firmus. So let me just change my format here. So this is, there's an accompanimental bit to the hymn, the pedal, and your left and right hands playing together. Then the right hand drops out and plays the hymn melody. And you may remember the hymn started something like this. So Bach's treatment of the melody starts like that, but then the gilded garlands appear. I just love the term gilded garlands because it's such a great way to describe this. When I've played this at recitals before, I've often said, if you think about furniture in a room, that as the furniture is the hymn tune. And then you think about your grandmother or your great aunt, or whoever you can think of, that would then bring in either doilies or antimacassars and drape them over the plain furniture. That's what I would think of these ornaments, this decoration. But gilded garlands is far better than that. So it should be, from this point forward, I'll always refer to it that way. So you could imagine this could be orchestrated very nicely with a cello, and then maybe some strings, and then maybe a solo oboe, something like that. I'm going to play it on a cornet, which is a combination of 5 stops building up the harmonic series: 8, 4, 2 2/3, 2, and 1 3/5, to get a very sort of pointed sound, much like a sound that Bach might have heard in his own day as the melody for this. So this is just, I think, an extraordinarily beautiful piece. I've heard so many people play it over the years very, very beautifully. I think of Jeff Binford, a former teacher of mine, Vicky Sirota, a former teacher as well, and back at Yale, and numerous people. And it's pleasurable to play as it is to hear. Again, this is not an organ recital, this is a hymn series, so I hope I'll do it justice, but I just want to leave you today with this beautiful setting of Schmücke dich. Last housekeeping, remember our Thursday noon concerts are in person. This Thursday, the 22nd, do I have that right? Yes, 22nd. Cheryl Bishkoff, who's the principal oboist with the Rhode Island Philharmonic, will be here with me, and she and I will be doing some Baroque music for organ, the continuo organ, the little organ, and oboe, and we'll do that so we can be way up here, and audience can be way out there, and you'll hear it beautifully, but we won't be near too close together as we do it, so everybody should be quite safe. But we would love to have you join us at noon on Thursday. You just need to email me, vedwards@gracepvd.org, to register and let me know that you're coming. So I hope we'll see you on Thursday. And I'll leave you today with Schmücke dich, o liebe Seele, from the 18 chorale preludes of Bach.